Hey, folks, welcome back to More Than a Refresh, the T3D sessions. Today we have Bradon Rogers, Chief Customer Officer at Island. Braden, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about what we're talking about.
Yeah, JD, thank you so much for having me today. Excited to be with you. Yeah, I've been at Island since the beginning of the company, and the role that I play as chief customer officer, anything that's technology centric that touches the customers in the field, is my universe. So that's the engineering resources in the field that help customers evaluate the technology and kind of see that it's the right fit for them. It's the folks that help with customer success and deploying the technology and people's usage of the product, support of the product, and I even have a hand in product marketing as well. So the messaging and the work that we've done to create the category, and ultimately, how we message it going forward. In terms of web content, press, you name it. So at the end of the day, I've been had my fingers in a lot of the parts of the pie, and it's been really fun to build a unique new category of application delivery. And you asked about topics a minute ago. The funniest thing is I think the topic du jour for about 15 of my calls a day, it seems like AI is at the top of that. So certainly we can go there, or a variety of different areas around how people consume applications and resources they need to do their jobs.
Well, first, I'd like to compliment you because you actually use the word unique properly. There's far too many people out there that will say like very unique, which is impossible,
I know.
right? So I want to commend you on that.
Thank you.
Good use of the English language, sir. Actually, we can talk about AI. But usually I don't do this, but I'm actually a little bit more interested in Island itself. I mean, don't sell me because that's not what our people want to hear. But
Yeah, of course.
you're you're kind of climbing an Everest here with the idea of a new browser, a secure browser. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It definitely was an Everest 5 years ago. When we had this idea and didn't have any technology and didn't have any customers using it. And then we started showing people, and some of the most brilliant technologists on the planet said, look, the reality is we're spending all of our days consuming applications in a web browser interface. And we've taken this great piece of consumer technology. There's nothing wrong with the consumer browser that we use every single day, but we're taking the most important part of our real estate, which is the browsing universe, and we're using a consumer piece of technology for that. So that's forcing the orgs to have to set up a series of mechanics around that engagement for the past 20 years. Things like, think about all the things we've done over the years that you've been doing and I've been doing it, where we backhaul traffic for the users to break and inspect SSL upstream.
Mhm.
Things like proxies and, the more modern version of the proxy universe, the SASE providers. But at the end of the day, we're breaking and inspecting SSL traffic. We're backhauling stuff. We're kind of forcing our will over the instrumentation of the direction of the traffic. We're standing up a crazy stack of technologies with data loss prevention technologies and CASBs for cloud apps and services and remote browser isolation vehicles and just kind of this crazy chaotic mess. And then sometimes we're taking all that stuff and we're sticking it inside of a VDI. So, let's just kind of make matters worse is let's string pixels to our end users for all their applications. And, now we've, said nobody, I love my VDI, said nobody ever. So at the end of the day, we take all that beautiful experience and, we do all these things that are important for the org, but we just sacrifice the end user entirely in the process and threw them into the fire. And so we
Okay,
just, yeah, go for it.
let me interject here because I want to, I'm in the open source world. And while I deal a lot with enterprises, I'm dealing with them on a very data centric level
Right.
because of Postgres. So I think it's important that for our listeners that we kind of establish, okay, consumer internet. So we're talking Edge, Chrome, uh, you know, Chrome likes like Brave,
Yep.
maybe a little Opera, maybe doubt it,
Yeah.
maybe Vivaldi. But you're talking about enterprise, you know, browser. Now, it'd be helpful, I think, if we talked about what does that mean? What is it that specifically, in a pragmatic perspective, makes it enterprise versus, say, Edge?
Yeah. Good call out. So we think about all the things I just mentioned a minute ago. And then
Mhm.
we stuck the consumer browser in the middle of that. So we wrapped all this stuff around it, kind of put bubble wrap around it. Think about like a shipping analogy. Said, look, what would happen if we took the familiarity of the interface the user knows well? And you mentioned the open source community. The Chromium project is one of the largest open source projects on the planet. What if
Correct.
we start with a familiar foundation and inherit a look and feel that looks exactly like the browser knows already. Not have to train a single end user at the end of the day. Put something super familiar in front of them, put the same exact rendering code in front of them that they already know well, so that the pixels render exactly the same way on the screen. And then we built services natively into the experience. And so what we did is we said, let's take the Chromium Foundation, let's pivot, not build for consumers, but build for the enterprise. Let me explain what I mean by that. Build an enterprise browser. What if we made the browser an actual application delivery platform and built services natively into the experience? Let me give you a few examples of services. What if I built identity awareness directly to the experience? Could tie the browser to your IDP environment, as an example. And suddenly the browser you're using is identity aware. So we're aware of the users and the roles, aware of their application entitlements you stood up. What if we could build posture assessment into it? Say, you know what, is this one of our company devices or not? If it's not one of our company devices, is it patched appropriately? Does it have an appropriate endpoint control? Have it do a posture assessment? What if it was geolocation aware or network aware? So build awareness of context. And based on context, then build controls in it, what we call, this is a very unique thing because the browser is the last mile, it's the true edge the user engages.
Right.
So at the end of the day, what if we built governance at the presentation layer? Let me explain what I mean by that. Like for certain situational needs, what if we redacted certain data for certain users? So maybe this is a user in a frontline call center role. They're engaging sensitive material in an application. Instead of going through all the complex upstream DLP and all the complex minutia of that, what if we just redacted this field in the application for them? But living at the presentation layer lets you govern and do unique things in such a way. You know, redacting certain data, governing copy and paste, governing screenshots. And those are all kind of very tiny basic blocking and tackle elements, but little tiny examples of what can happen when you govern at the presentation of the apps.
All right. So this is interesting. Now, I get the argument of at certain things at the UI level, copy and paste, so on
Mhm.
and so forth. Especially, screenshots are an infamous way to steal data,
Yeah,
right?
right.
The whole masking of rows and stuff as a database guy, I'm just going to say that's the wrong way to do it, and we can agree to disagree. But I do have to ask. I mean, I got to challenge you a little bit. The aren't you just like moving the complexity? Right.
Mm,
I don't disagree at all that the environments nowadays are ridiculously complex. One of the reasons that I will not work on client environments anymore is not because I'm not skilled. It's that I have reached a point where I can pay people to deal with the BS that it takes just to get to the client environment,
right.
right? And I think everything should be encrypted, but between encryption, MFA, terminal server, Bastion, another MFA, private credential store, right? Just to get there,
Yeah.
right? VPNs. So, it can take 15, 20 minutes just to get to the point where you can look at the potential problem.
Mm,
What I'm hearing is a lot of that, while yes, you're simplifying the infrastructure, you're pushing all of that infrastructure into a browser base. And that to me kind of breaks the idea that we should be working towards simplicity, not
mm.
complexity.
Yeah, I totally see why you'd say that on the surface. Let me elaborate a little bit more. So we take novel constructs. And I used some examples a minute ago. Like I'm not going
Yeah.
around redacting all the data in the applications. I'm giving you an example of what can be done at the presentation layer relative to other things. Like take networking. You're not going to redact data in the network very effectively. It's very difficult. I don't know if you've ever experienced or gone through because you're a data guy, probably dealt with tokenization in your past somewhere in the
Oh,
mix.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
the painful aspects of trying to do such mechanics for us are just made a lot easier by living at that presentation. But I'm not going around redacting all the data for the users. We leverage very novel constructs, super simple constructs. Perfect example. One of the mechanics in the enterprise browser is something called an application boundary. Think of the application boundary. Think about like a virtual perimeter. The browser understands this tab right here is a user logged into the corporate tenant of, let's pick an app, ChatGPT, Copilot. This
Okay.
one over here, they're logged into a tab. They're using their personal app here. Whoever who's
Oh,
logged into
that's nice.
Salesforce. And so
That's nice.
the browser understands now the context. These are corporate apps. That's personal. I'll let you move data fluidly across the corporate apps. When you try to take data beyond the boundary of personal, I'm not going to block personal. I don't have to. I just build a simple construct of a perimeter around the personal. And here's why this is really nice for the end user. So the end user gets considered now. Back to your commentary a minute ago. complexity goes away because the end user now has access to personal stuff. They're not getting the ugly block pages that they got in the past, all that nastiness we've done in cyber for years to
Mhm.
them. They get to access personal chat, GPT, personal Gmail. Company data stays over here in the corporate apps. And the browser's mechanics let them have freedom to use the personal stuff. Again, without any agents on the host, don't have to install any additional thick agents or anything. At the end of that, all the user has to know how to do is log into the single sign-on provider. Although when they log in, the access to the applications doesn't have to just be SaaS apps. It could be internal apps as well without a VPN client, built-in zero trust network access. So the user, to them, it feels like one big workspace that's out there wide open on the internet. To us, it's not. At the end of the day, full policy and governance, private access to the internal applications were necessary. So all of a sudden, the world of the user becomes very simple, and it feels like a web browser, even though they're accessing internal resources with no VPN client, et cetera. So practitioners' lives get easier significantly by the policy constructs, and then the end users' lives get easier as well.
Well, I tell you, I mean, to me, that's a killer feature. I could see some abuses there because, and abuses on both sides, right? Because if when you have a situation where your environment is work,
Mhm.
then you're working, and then, like you said, you have in isolation, which is great. To the personal, I would have concerns about monitoring of personal use, things like that. But on that, as an employer, your personal use should be pretty minimal during the day when I'm paying you. I'm not saying don't check your mail every once in a while or whatever,
Right,
but I mean, if you're out there not working and not making me money, why am I paying you? Right. So
right.
it's kind of a mixed bag, but I can tell you where you have nailed something that, to my knowledge, not a single, the most important device on the planet, which I do not have in front of me, cell phone,
Mm,
right? And the fact that in, I have Samsung, I have Verizon. I should have the ability to have two phone numbers, one that is personal, one that is business, to the same phone without paying thousands of dollars a month. They should present differently, right? When it's a personal person calling me in my personal phone book, it should be a nice blue, happy face. And when it's a business call, it should be ringing dollar signs, whatever,
right.
right? But you should have that isolation, and we don't. So I think that's a killer feature. I have one last question, and then I'll let you go.
Sure.
Does it run on Linux?
Runs on Linux. Yeah, so that's one of our core platforms. Actually, several different flavors of Linux as well in the process. So at the end of the
I
day,
assume the Red Hats and the Ubuntus
Red Hat,
and
Debian,
maybe
System
SUSE.
Ubuntu, and then we've done some derivative forms for partnerships we have with different device manufacturers, different non-traditional form factors of devices. Like I'll use perfect example. The folks at iGel, they're a great
Sure.
partner. We were the partner of the year with those guys last year, and they want to let you go grab low cost, low powered devices that are maybe yesterday's device and turn around and re-energize those things and make them useful again. And that's the kind of environments we want to live on. So yeah, 100% great Linux base of customers using it today.
All right. Well, folks, this has been another T3D Sessions with Bradon Rogers, Chief Customer Executive. Is that right? Chief Customer,
Officer,
Chief Success.
it's a mouth.
T3D session.
It's a
Thank you,
mouthful.
Braden.
Thanks, JD. Good to see you.